The Atlantic. We'll go to Florida. They made some massive moves, but let's start with the big one at forward, Claude Giroux. So it was, read the deal out quickly. It was Claude Giroux, Connor Bunneman, German Rubstov, and a fifth in 2025 to Florida for Owen Tippett, a 2024 first, and a 2023 third, with 50% retention on Giroux. What are your first thoughts on this deal?
You know, at first I thought they overpaid. I kind of thought Giroux was a winger who was highly touted but is slightly past his prime. But the more that I look into this deal and analyze it, I think it was a pretty good deal for Florida. When coming into the deadline, Florida desperately needed winger depth, especially in the top six. Right now they had Vernegy and Marchman in there right now. And I mean, no disrespect to them. It's tough to win a cup when you have those two guys on your second line.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they didn't need a defenseman. Their top four were Ekblad, Uyghur, Gudas, and Forsling. It's among the best top four in the league. And their goaltending, it's kind of tough to say, but Bobrovsky's playing well. So, I mean, the GM went out, got what he needed. I mean, Claude Giroux isn't the same mid-2010 Giroux that we know, who was a top five winger in the league. But, I mean, he still rocks a 93% overall wins above replacement. His expected value of offense is in the 93rd percentile. He can still score.
Yeah, he's definitely still a really good player. I think Philly not being great the past couple of years has maybe devalued him, at least like you said, in my eyes too. I didn't know how good he was, but he's definitely really good. He's going to help that team a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree. A big deal as well as that Florida went out and got the best free agent in the market.
Yeah, I wonder if they can figure out a way for him to stay. It'll be tough. Depends how much money he wants. But we talked to it last episode with no state tax. I don't know. Maybe they can figure something out.
Yeah, I mean,
to keep him around.
There weren't that many teams who was willing to waive his no trade clause too, and the fact that he did to Florida means that he wants to be there.
Yeah,
I think it's a good move. One other thing about this move that I really like, and I mean, I don't know if the GM did this on purpose. I would like to think that he did. We talked a lot last week about Huberdeau and in general their wingers' inability to play defense. A huge part of Giroux's game is that he's a fantastic two-way forward.
Yeah.
He's in the 90th percentile of all defensive metrics as a winger. He can clearly play two-way, which is huge on this team considering that the wingers don't play defense.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too because I never thought of Giroux as a defensive guy, especially on that Philly team was kind of bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if they pair him up with Barkov, who's a beast defensively, and I wonder if that acts as like a shutdown pair that can also burn you to going the other way because him and Barkov together is kind of scary.
Yeah, I agree. I really wouldn't see him playing on Huberdeau's line because it takes away from that shutdown aspect that you just mentioned. Kind of funny, Giroux came out today and said he kind of wanted to play with Barkov. They're good friends off the ice. They have some good chemistry. I would be excited to see how they do. Overall, I'm going to give them a B+ just because they gave up so much. Like you said, they gave up a first, a third, and a top 10 draft pick in Owen Tippett, which seems a lot for a rental player. Do you not agree?
I think on the surface it's a lot, but Owen Tippett he hasn't been that good. He's 23, I think. He hasn't really been able to like make a mark in the NHL. And I mean, I know there's late bloomers, but I feel like by 23, if you're gonna be a good NHL player, you would have already shown signs of that. He just hasn't done all that well. He wasn't even making their lineup. He was in the AHL when they traded for him.
Very true.
I mean, he's good and he can turn around. He can, turn around and become a really good player. In Philly, I just don't know if the stats or the play has been there to suggest that. But like you said, he was only willing to waive his no trade clause for this team. So they were kind of in a tough spot. When a player only wants to go one place, you don't have any leverage. So maybe they could have done better if there was a bidding war. But yeah, I think this is a good deal for Florida, to be honest.
Yeah, so talking about Owen Tippett, in 95 games, he has 33 points, which by no means is spectacular, with a plus-minus of -9 on one of the best teams in the league. I mean, like you said, he hasn't really panned out as well as he should have, but I'm rooting for him. One of the things I'm worried about is that Philadelphia kind of seems like the place where draft picks go to die.
Yeah, they're just a mess there.
Right? It seems like theoretically a place where he could develop because there's not much talent on that team. He'll get a lot of minutes. But man, it just seems like a lot of picks, with the most notorious one being Nolan Patrick, just do not develop in that system.
Yeah, Nolan Patrick is a tough one because he had a bunch of injuries. But you're right. I mean, I don't think Philly's a team that's known for their development. So let's, I guess, hope for Tippett's sake that something works out. But I'm not convinced, honestly, by the return. So I think Florida did well. I think Philly did well under the circumstances. Well, reasonably well. But I think Giroux is going to make a big difference. But let's stay on Florida because they made another pretty big trade, and I have some thoughts on this one.
Oh boy, so do I.
Ben Chariot to Florida for a first in 2023, a fourth in 2022, and prospect Tyler Smilanek. I'm not sure how we live in a world where Giroux and Ben Chariot go for almost the exact same price, and how the same team thought, yeah, I'm going to give up a first plus for both of these players. One who's in the 93rd percentile in WAR, and one who is, according to the numbers, barely an NHLer. And I know a lot of these models are really undervaluing Chariot because the team he plays on, like the type of game that he plays, but come on.
I agree. I agree. I think Ben Chariot was the most overrated player at the trade deadline, and I was praying at night that Kyle Dubas did not go for him. I'm so thankful that he didn't. I mean, like you said, 10% wins above replacement, offensively terrible, defensively not great. He's below the 40th percentile in all metrics, offensively and defensively. The only thing that he's good at is taking penalties. How funny is that?
And, well, I guess the refs put their whistles away in the playoffs, but still, like, I know, like, the GMs must see something in him because there was a bidding war apparently, but we have access to Twitter and we know he's bad. What do they look at? Like, I just don't know. I don't know what they see in him, but multiple GMs think he's this stud defenseman who's going to win them games in the playoffs. I don't know why you would give up a first plus.
Yeah, what really worries me is the fact that he has gotten considerably worse from last year. And I know you said that a lot of that can have to do with the team that he's playing for, but we're looking at a 21% decrease in wins above replacement, a 7% decrease in offensive production, a 42% decrease in expected value of defensive production. His time on the PK is terrible. He cannot play on the PK most of the time because he's in the penalty box. Yeah. Right? He's just, I really don't see the value in Ben Chariot, especially with the fact that he went for a first round pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just have to think that sometimes GMs are pressured to make moves at the deadline to show their fan base that they're going for it.
Is this the guy though? I guess.
Why wouldn't they go out and get a Mark Giordano or a Hampus Lindholm with this level of capital that they gave up? They gave up, what did you say, a first round pick?
First, a fourth, and a prospect.
You couldn't get anyone better for that?
Well, we'll talk about it. Like, we'll actually talk about it next, Lindholm's trade. But it went for a slightly more. But Lindholm is a much better player.
100%.
So I don't know. But GMs always do this. There's always guys at the deadline who are just big. They're not great at hockey, but they're big, and they move guys around and they cross-check people in the head in the playoffs, and they like that. I mean, if they go on and win a cup, we'll look like idiots. And right now, it looks like a pretty tough trade for Florida.
I agree. I'm going to give Florida a C- on this trade. And when we move over to Montreal, I'm going to give him an A+ because they moved him for something other than for free. I mean, it looked like a lot of teams were interested in them, so that might not be a justified argument. But from a purely statistical standpoint, he's been bad for a really, really long time. And I know that most of Twitter agrees with me because when it came out that Ben Chariot might have gotten traded to the Leafs, everyone went crazy.
Yeah, nobody wanted that to happen.
Right? The fact that they got... And here's the big thing. They got a first-round pick in the 2023 draft.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams this year at the deadline were advocating for picks that were not in the 2022 draft because the 2023 one was ubiquitously seen as much deeper than this year's draft. So they not only got a first-round pick, they got one in a far deeper draft.
Yeah.
Right? I just think they hit this out of the park. And, I mean, I know it's probably a top 10 protected pick, so there's not going to be a time that you can hope that this pick turns into like the Connor Bedard lottery.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, a first rounder is a first rounder. And the last thing that I'll say is that Smilanek, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I apologize, has had a very good season in college as far as like 13 goals and 22 points in 38 games. He looks like a guy that can play in the NHL someday.
That's not bad. Yeah. maybe he's not gonna shoot the lights out, but if he ends up on your roster, I mean, you take that all day.
Let me just ask you one more thing. Do you think with the addition of Chariot and with Giroux that this team is the favorite in the East to make it to the Stanley Cup?
I've been kind of high on the Panthers all season. I know we have questions about Bobrovsky, but let's just say, assuming that he is average to above average, they're loaded. I'm scared of them.
Yeah, I agree. I hope to God the Leafs don't play them in the first round. I think with this addition in winger depth, they're the favorite in the East to get there.
Yeah, they're gonna be really dangerous.
Yep.
But let's move to another team in the Atlantic that got a defenseman. We've alluded to him a couple of times. So Boston made a big splash. They got Hampus Lindholm and Cody Curran for a 2022 first, a 2023 second, a 2024 second, Urho Vakanainen, and John Moore. This trade, I didn't expect Boston to go make a big splash like that, but the more I thought about it, I think it makes a bit of sense. Their core is getting older. I know they're the guys in the NHL who seem to defy time. They just get better with age. Like Patrice Bergeron is having another incredible season, but I think they must know in that front office that the time is ticking for them to make another run. I think this just goes kind of to show that they're still making pushes for this.
I agree, but do you like the move? Like, do you like the fit of Lindholm on this team?
I think he pairs up really well with Charlie McAvoy.
Okay.
I mean, Hampus Lindholm has never been the most prolific offensively, but he's steady, and maybe that frees up Charlie McAvoy to be a little bit more offensive. I think they're going to pair up quite well together, but I do think the price was really high.
Yeah, so going off of what you just said, I think this was the biggest overpay at the deadline next to Ben Sherratt. That's honestly my opinion. 35th projected WAR, expected value in offense, like you said, in the 40th percentile. He's an average at best defender. I mean, I think the dude is average at best, and you gave up what? A first, a second, another second, and 2 prospects. And then you go out and sign him to an 8-year deal at 6.5, correct?
Yeah.
Right? So it seems like they wanted longevity. And my question is, you don't think if they threw in another first-round pick, they could have got Chychrun?
Well, apparently they were one of the teams that were really in on Chychrun. But man, 2 firsts for Chychrun that's a lot too.
It is a lot, but he would be on term for 3 more years at a significantly lower cap hit, almost 40% lower than what Lindholm is currently at.
True.
Far better defensively and offensively. He's looking like he's going to come back this year. I don't understand this move. If they were looking at it from a perspective of longevity, I thought Chychrun would have been the guy. And I mean, I think they gave up a lot for Lindholm, and they only had to put in a little bit more to go get Chychrun. This move really boggles my mind. Like, do you see any justification for why Lindholm was the guy they were looking for specifically?
I mean, they probably would have preferred Chychrun. Maybe they were scared of the injury. Maybe they didn't want to meet the price, even if it was just a little more. Maybe they just didn't feel comfortable going there. But I don't know. Unless Lindholm has a bit of a renaissance, this move, especially with that contract, might come back to bite them. Because how old is he now?
He's 27. I don't even know if this qualifies as his prime. He's probably in the latter half of his prime.
He's in his prime, maybe towards the end. And in 8 years, he'll be 35, 36. That's a lot of money. But I think this is one of those contracts where like you just sign him to have him, and you let the next GM, who will be there in 8 years, worry about it, because Don Sweeney probably doesn't really care. He's like, I got maybe 1 to 3 max more years of this core. I'm just going to do my best to surround them with good players. Will Hampus Lindholm be good for the next 3 years? Like, he'll be good for the next 3 years. He may not be Jacob Chychrun for the next 3 years, but he'll be good enough. I think that might have been the rationale. Like, they had to make a move. They saw an opportunity to sign a guy so that he'll be here with the core for the next few years. But ultimately, it'll probably come back to bite them.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why this trade was made was because they were pressured to go out and show that they're going to keep pushing with this core and ride them till all these guys retire. And I mean, it's not Sweeney's fault that at the deadline there wasn't that much available. I mean, in my opinion, over the last 3 or 4 years, this is one of the weakest free agents, or not free agents, rental players that are available at the deadline.
Yeah.
There weren't any huge names, so fine, if he had to go out and get a guy, Hampus Lindholm might have been the best guy that he could have gotten. Just the fact that they gave him that big of a contract makes me think that they truly want him there for a long time, obviously.
They must want him,
and they weren't just going for him because they needed to pick up a player. I just really don't see what he does for them, especially in the long term, especially with the fact that they're going to be entering a rebuild soon. Like we've seen from San Jose, giving players at the end of their prime humongous contracts with humongous term does not fare well for a rebuild. And if Don Sweeney realizes that this team has 2 or 3 years left, this contract might come back to bite them in the bum.
Yeah, it might. But like I said, that might be the next guy's problem to worry about. But yeah, it's not really pretty.